Hey YouTube, it's Matt with Olympus Reptiles. And really quick, before we start the video in the month of October and November, I want to take 1 second to ask you a favor if you have the time. We're going to put a link in the description of our videos that goes to our PayPal. And you're going to see me growing a beard for about the next month till the end of November. What that beard represents is we're working to raise money to give kids a Christmas, otherwise wouldn't have one here in our community. So anything you send us to PayPal in that month, just mark it Hair for the Holidays, click the link, whether it's $1 or $100, even a penny helps. If you mark Hair for the Holidays, we'll give everything that we get from you directly to those children. Through that last year, we personally were able to raise enough money to give 9 families a Christmas that wouldn't have had one, and the charity itself here in our community helped over 70 families. So if you have the chance, we would love your donation. We'd really appreciate it because we love getting to help people in our local community. Thank you. And watch this rockin' beard come in because I'm really bad at growing it, but we're going to give it our best shot. Thanks for watching, guys, and we appreciate your help. On to the video. Hey YouTube, it's Matt with Olympus Reptiles, and we are still here at TallGrass Reptiles, but instead of being in the, I'd call it the auxiliary room maybe?
Yeah,
or the
TallGrass South,
the
or whatever
annex.
direction.
The annex,
The
like
annex.
annex sounds like. We are now in the main facility that you have, which is really cool because we should have shown you outside. What it basically is you've taken and you've insulated and you put a nice concrete floor in a shed outside, more or less, correct?
Yeah, this is a 12-foot by 24-foot shed where I have 8 feet on one end where I breed all my rats, and then 16 feet on the other end.
And you're doing so much with that space. And then you've got a really nice heat air system set in there with a really nice thermostat so you can control that.
Yep.
No matter what time of season we're in, whether it's hot or cold, you're able to control temps out here. So it's just like a house set up on that, but it keeps it separate.
Yeah. And when I originally built this shed, I thought, man, this could be more space than I'd ever need. I never imagined having wall-to-wall racks and squeezing so many animals into a small space, but you just kind of keep growing and you make do with the space that you have, I guess.
Yeah, so we'll have to have shed 2 next time we come here because
Right.
it's still growing. But I think it's a pretty cool facility you got and a setup, and I love how much you're doing with this space. But one thing we want to do today is you've got some incubation tubs here, and you do this different than I do. So I was going to
I think one of the kids tried to come in, but
that's the thing you don't notice. Reid's a dad.
yeah, I've got 6 kids. So.
A dad many times over, so he needs you to buy his snakes. No.
Well, maybe, yeah.
So you gotta send his kids to college, right?
Right, exactly.
But you do your incubation a little different than we do. And speaking of that too, if you are on our Patreon, you will get to see some of his kids actually. So kind of neat to see their interest in the hobby. You do this much different than what I do. So I wanted to kind of have you show what you do, why it works for you. Because like I say, just because I do something doesn't mean it's the only way. Doesn't mean it's the right way. It means it's the right way for me, but there's 100 ways to do this.
So I've tried a lot of different methods. I started with vermiculite, and I was very meticulous about, oh my gosh, I gotta weigh out the water, I gotta weigh out the vermiculite and get the perfect ratio of water and vermiculite. And then I went to perlite mixed with vermiculite. And then I actually tried the coconut and incubated on that. And all the methods work. I just had the most success with just straight vermiculite. And honestly, I've gotten so relaxed about how I mix it that you're probably going to think, man, how does this guy ever hatch a snake out, right? But it just really, it works, and it's not extremely scientific.
We know you hatch them. We just saw that. We
Right.
saw a bunch of them hatching out.
Yeah, so I haven't had any snakes go bad that, you know, a lot of times I'll candle them. If they don't have any veins at all, they're completely yellow, I'll still leave them in there, you know, just, hey, did I miss something?
Yep.
But those are really the only eggs that I have go bad for me. So
It's a when in doubt, incubate it out.
So normally I just do this underneath the sink, and I just, you know, not full blast on the faucet, but run warm water throughout the outside and then kind of splash some in the middle, and then I just kind of check the consistency of it. And so I'll do it here this time. And I'm not gonna measure it, I'm not gonna do anything here. I think I'd always rather err on the side a little bit more wet than dry.
Right.
So I'm just pouring water in there, and then I'm just going to kind of mix it up.
You know, and the fact is, we get so detail oriented, and I do it too all the time. I have my recipe written on the side of my incubator for how much water, but these things have been hatching in the wild for millions of years.
With different humidity levels, you can't imagine that it's exactly the same everywhere a snake's laid eggs, right?
And I'm pretty sure Africa has some changes in temperatures and humidity in different spots.
Right.
And not every hole is identical.
So what I'm looking for here is after I've mixed the water in, you know, you can clump it up, it'll clump, but it's not dripping water, and it'll easily break back down. So I know that this is moist. I'm just trying to make sure there's not extremely dry areas. And I'm not burying the eggs, you know, so the eggs are only touching a small portion of the vermiculite, so they're not soaking up a bunch of water from it.
Right.
So that's why I say I'd rather err on the side of a little bit more water than less, because I'm not too concerned about them soaking up a bunch of water from the vermiculite. They're really just going to more or less sit on top.
Right.
And that substrate's going to make sure the tub itself is humid enough to hatch the eggs.
Now with this too, since we just kind of pour water in, you're getting it set right. Are you feeling the need, and I already know this answer, I'm pretty sure, to run a humidity gauge and a temperature gauge in every incubation tub just to make sure it's set right there, like 89.6 and 99% humidity?
I've never done that in my life. Sorry.
See, guys, that's something I said. People are looking at that. I'm like, when I first started, I did, and now I don't. People are like, well, how do you know what humidity is in there? Well, I got tried running on one, and if that one was right, I make all my tubs the same as right. And then I got to where I make all my tubs the same in the same incubator. I don't really check it, and it hasn't changed a thing.
Right.
We make this more difficult, especially when we're new, and I think we have to.
Yeah, I mean, and believe me, I was much more
absolutely
OCD about it when I first started, and as over time, you do it over and over and over again, and you just realize that it's not super critical. And at some point, time becomes an issue too, right?
It does.
You have a family, you got a full-time job. I can't, measure every single
water drop.
Exactly.
And on top of that, I think when you gain, because there's a big difference in experience and knowledge.
Right.
And you can gain a lot of knowledge by studying and learning and watching videos and reading online and reading articles and going back through old forums and reading different people's methods. But until you gain that experience, it's really hard to know what works best. And when you get to a certain point in experience, you can do just what you're doing. You can feel it, you can see it, and we can see that on video. But
so it's clumping up, and if I squeeze this and water droplets came out, it'd be too wet, right?
And then
I
you
would
just
know
add some more vermiculite, right?
Right, exactly.
Dry it out a little bit. But it's part of that experience, I think. I tell you, if you're first starting, you can be a little OCD.
Yeah.
But 5-6 years in, you're going to lighten up. I guarantee it if you're having success. And obviously, you hatch at a super high rate.
Right.
You make amazing snakes, so it's working.
It's working, and I've simplified it so much for me because it's a time thing too. So,
Absolutely.
It's working, and I spend minimal time worrying about it, and it is what it is. So.
And speaking of working, we're going to get to see how you put eggs in here, right? Because there's a massive clutch you found.
So I did 2 because it might be enough eggs where I need to separate them out. I may actually, if I can't fit them or don't want to mess with separating them, I might have to go get a bigger container, but I know I have enough vermiculite for a larger container. So.
Here's a question for you, because I ran into this recently, and I've had the first time I've ever ran into this. I'm sure you've done it before. When I've gone to separate eggs, this year there's been 2 instances where I popped a small little hole in the egg, and my method has been I just put a Band-Aid on it.
Yeah, I mean, because then a lot of times it'll dry itself out around the edge.
Kind of seal itself up.
Yeah.
So you've had.
It was one of my first ever clutches. I was trying to separate a bad egg from good egg, and I did the same thing, like a little pinhole.
Yeah.
And I ran out and got like the liquid glue and stuff, and I tried that, and I think that probably was too toxic and killed the egg.
Yeah.
So that was one of my only experiences with it, and it didn't go well. So I try not to. If I don't have to separate them, I don't.
Me neither, but when I went to the small, I just had to because the way they were piled.
Right.
And it just didn't pull in. It went poop, and I was like, ah! So far, so good with the Band-Aid, but I didn't know if you'd ever tried that or not.
That's a good idea, though, because all you're really trying to do is stop the flow, and then almost like a cut, right?
Right.
Once the blood stops and starts to dry up, and then it stops bleeding.
I didn't want to cover too much of the egg for breathing purposes of the shell.
Right.
And so there's not too much Band-Aid that way.
Right.
But it's kind of funny looking. So I'm looking forward to cutting the Band-Aid eggs.
Yeah. You'll have to let me know how that works out.
I will. I figured you could help me and tell me if I was doing something wrong.
I try not to put holes in my eggs.
So that's what I did wrong. I put a hole in my egg. Right. Don't do that. That's the advice. So don't rip your eggs, guys.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't put a hole in your egg. That's much easier to deal with. I'm sure there's some methods out there that you can Google, and Band-Aid.
Band-Aid's what I read.
Works,
I also read the liquid, liquid Band-Aid stuff.
That's what I did.
A few
I tried
things,
that, but I think I'd messed with the egg too much and disturbed it too much, and it didn't
Band-Aid's
work out
close by, and so far so good. So
right.
We'll see. I'll candle it tonight and see how it's doing, actually. So.
There you go.
Fingers crossed. Let's see what you got in here.
All right, so this is before I pull it out, this is a pastel blackhead Mojave female. And
oh, wow.
You'll see those, a lot of them have some pretty awesome looking striping. So this is a girl that has laid before, but the last time she laid was in 2017. So she's just been getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and took a year off, and so this year she laid for me.
So she took a year off, but she paid you back this year.
I'm hoping so. I think this is a pretty big clutch. She was massive.
And that is an awesome looking snake. You know, it reminds me kind of the het red axanthic black pastel combos in the way it looks, but the color's different. And this seems to be brighter and less kind of a greenish haze.
Yeah, and you'll notice as females get gravid and towards, you know, ovulation, they start to glow, and a lot of times that carries through to the clutches. You know, she's looking spectacular right now. So
one thing I can't wait to breed is.
So anytime I'm pulling eggs, I'm obviously not going to come out right at her face, right?
Right.
Because they will get defensive. So I try to come in over the top from the back of her head, and then, you know, a lot of times this can be a little bit challenging, especially with large eggs like this. My gosh, that's a lot of eggs.
Holy cow.
So I'm trying to gently pull her out with not flop the eggs back down on the tub too.
Because, well, they'd probably be okay. Yeah. Why have that happen if you can avoid it?
This girl is huge.
So what do you think she weighs before laying? Like,
I don't know what she laid before weighing, but we can see what she still weighs now.
Because she looks like she's ready to go almost right now.
Yeah, she's, like I said, she took a year off and just kept growing and growing. So after laying, let's see how big she is.
I'm going to bet we're still over almost 3 at least.
Oh yeah, she's, if we can even get her on the scale. So she's over 3, but she flopped off there.
She's going to fight you on it.
Yeah, she's probably not in a very good mood right now. So yeah.
Right about just a tick over 3.
I think 31 before she flopped part of her body on the side of the scale.
And there's
there.
Probably 2,000 grams in eggs there.
Yeah, we could probably weigh it. Could find out. Let me throw her in another tub here. So I always, the quicker you can get a female away from her eggs, sometimes I'll wipe them off with a paper towel with a little bit of water. Mm-hmm. But the best success I've had is putting them in an entirely different enclosure with new bedding. Sometimes even starting them off on paper towel after they've laid. For some reason, I've had a little bit of success there getting them eating faster.
And I think the theory there is we're trying to get them away from that smell, because they're so driven by their smells and what they're seeing in the environment. Seeing those eggs, she thinks she's supposed to be on them and incubating them. But she's away from them, and the smell's gone. The hope is she gets back on food faster and recovers from this, because this is a hard thing for them to go through.
Yeah, that's a chunk of eggs right there. Should we weigh them?
Yeah, let's do it.
So that's 1,500 grams of eggs.
So she was at least 4,600.
Yeah, she's a big girl.
That is a big girl.
All right, so I'm thinking with how they're clumped and how big they are, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get by with one container here. But let's see if we can get a count. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and then I think 14 on the bottom.
Wow. So 14 eggs.
One.
You think you might have 15?
14.
14. That is big. That's the biggest clutch. Bigger than the biggest clutch I've ever had.
Most I've had is like one female had 22 eggs, and one of them was twins. It was insane. Just a massive, big normal girl. So.
Now, how frequently do you hatch twins? I've never hatched a twin.
I haven't hatched twins in probably 4 or 5 years.
So it's not very common for you.
Not. I mean, I've had it a few times, but yeah, that's going to be a little bit too big for that container. So
yeah, I think it'll be touching sides.
We might have to cut away, and I'll go grab a bigger container, and we'll show you how I set these up here.
All right. Well, you saw how he made the incubation. We'll get those put in there, and we'll go from there. Well, we're back. I know that was instantaneous for you, but we had to go from that little container to this big old thing, because that's just a crazy amount of eggs.
I just poured the two tubs worth of vermiculite into the larger tub here. And
again, we're very scientific.
Yeah.
But
in case you were wondering.
Yeah, you don't have to be. That's one of the points, too, that I think is so great, is when you talk to people who have been doing this for a long time and are successful at it, one of the things you're going to find is they're successful for a reason. They've got the experience to do it. they're able to do it, and they're not going to have to be as detail oriented. It's not meaning that they're lazy or they're skipping. I mean, we do the same thing with what we do, but the importance of it is that you don't have to be as detail oriented because your experience says that you're good at this.
Right.
And you're going to have that same success. If you weren't having that success, I imagine you would be doing something differently, correct?
Right, exactly. Like I said, I went through a lot of different methods to start off with and just found that this tends to work the best. When I incubated on the coconut,
Yep.
I had success, but also I had a lot more eggs die on me.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, I need to
Go back to what does best
what
for
I
you.
was doing, and why try
Absolutely.
to fix something that's already working, right?
I agree. And
So I'm not burying these eggs by any means. All I did was I set them, I kind of shoved a little bit more vermiculite to this side, and then I set them in there, and then just kind of pushed a little bit around the outside. So like I said before, all the eggs aren't buried in the vermiculite. The vermiculite's really just there to keep the humidity up in the tub. And some people worry about adding water throughout the incubation. I don't. Once I get the vermiculite right, I put a lid on it
you can call it a day.
and call it a day. And
See,
I'll come in maybe once every few weeks and do one of these numbers to get a little bit of air in it, but other than that, I'm leaving it alone.
See, and I was a water addict. That's what got me in trouble my first clutch and why I went to one that I don't have to worry
Right.
about it. Again, it's a preference thing. But I just love this because you go on the Facebook groups and you'd think that if you don't do everything somebody's certain method way, that all your eggs are going to die. You're the world's worst person. The fact is, guys, that is just the biggest pile of bullshit. And I will say it. Facebook groups are full of bad information. Not all of them, there's great people on there, but they're full of bad information, and they're full of people that are trying to, a lot of times, promote themselves as knowing more than what they actually do. And
Sure.
obviously, you've built this from nothing in,
Right.
in a fairly short span of time. I mean, how long is this?
I've been doing snakes for about 10 years now. Yep.
So in 10 years, you built this where you're one of the most well-known in the Midwest, even though you're kind of a quiet guy. It was really hard to get you on camera.
Yeah.
Produced some of the best genetics, have a really high hatch rate, added tons of equipment, tons of snakes through reinvesting in what you've done.
Right.
And you wouldn't be able to do that if you weren't doing something right.
Sure.
So
Appreciate that.
the hell with the Facebook groups. Trust the guys that have come and been successful and learned. And this is some of the people I learned from. I learned a lot from you guys when I first started. I'm always so thankful for that and some of the genetics and things I picked up.
Absolutely.
Just
And there's
amazing
people
stuff.
before me that helped me out a ton too. It's kind of that's part of the industry, right?
Right.
It's helping each other.
And if you always tear down the new people instead of helping them, guess what we don't have in a few years?
Right.
We don't have an industry or a hobby anymore.
Yeah.
So it's really important to bring those people along. So, all right, Kurt, anything you want to add?
No.
Reid, anything
Yeah.
you want to add about this incubation?
I generally try to get them in the incubator fairly quickly after I pull them, so I probably need to get that going.
Let's get them in the incubator,
All right.
and we'll see you guys next
All right,
week.
Appreciate it.